When I was a young lad, I remember seeing small advertisements and articles in magazines for Chibi-Robo. There was something about its small, toy-sized characters that captured that Toy Story childlike wonderment all the way back then. And heck, it still captures my imagination today. But when I finally unwrapped that rectangular present for my birthday, revealing the pink and brown tones of the cover, my excitement was through the roof. Back then, I remember flashing that cover around to everyone there. I couldn't believe it was finally mine. But back then, no one knew what the big deal was. And today, that's still no different. Chibi-Robo isn't just a cool game from my childhood. It's my favorite video game ever. Of all time. And no one seems to remember it at all. So, I gotta fight to keep his legacy alive. Thus, why we're here. I'm the hairiest hair, and I believe video games are art, but this one, Chibi-Robo, is a slept-on masterpiece. Chibi-Robo is about a small little robot fella, available for purchase assuming you have the high dollars to pay for him. Our Chibi-Robo that we'll be taking control of has been picked up by a quaint little family known as the Sandersons. There's George Sanderson, your average otaku dad, and just like an otaku dad would be, he's currently, well, let's call it in between jobs. You can discern all you need to know about his character by looking at his sound financial investment in an expensive walking Roomba. A decision I'm sure his wife will definitely not get heated over. Speaking of, there's Helen Sanderson, our mother, wife, and undoubtedly the only sane one in the house. And while I don't have much to say on her just yet, she's presented to us as an average nagging wife in her introduction. Mrs. Sanderson has every right to nag her husband, and the further this story goes on, the deeper her importance to that story becomes. So for now, that's all I'll say about her. The daughter of these two is named Jenny, an icon in her own right. Just look at that frog hat. Her parents, however, don't find her as entertaining as I do. Jenny is a master of keeping kayfabe, and mostly just speaks to her parents and Chibi-Robo in ribbits, with an occasional word thrown in for context. Entertaining as I find it, it's clearly causing a strain on the household as the parents feel like they can't understand or relate to the daughter at all. And that's without me reading into the subtext of the situation. And finally, there's Tao. Tao? I think it's Tao, the family dog, a murderous beast with a hunger for dog bones, as well as the bones of his enemies. Our game begins with a phenomenal setup as Chibi-Robo is unveiled as Jenny's super surprise birthday gift on her 8th birthday. We get to meet all our new family, establish their characters, while also thrusting us into a Chibi-Robo's purpose in life, as delivered to us by our very own exposition bot / manager, Television. Chibi-Robo's purpose is to spread happiness. While vague, this is mainly achieved through basic chores, at least initially. Chibi-Robo, in terms of gameplay, is another one of those Nintendo games that gives you loads of tedious tasks, and for some reason, we don't mind it, finding satisfaction in that monotony. As the game progresses, however, you can earn moolah. With this moolah, you'll be able to purchase all kinds of upgrades, taking you from a simple chore droid to an unstoppable Swiss Army Terminator with a thirst for happiness. Your esteemed partner Telly is a somewhat timid manager-type character, but with Chibi-Robo being a mute, Telly is both our exposition deliverer as well as our mouthpiece.
My client! My client! My client! My client! My client! Barack Lesnar! What?
Telly is a very selfless individual. He sacrifices his dream for one that he has for you. That dream is for you, Chibi-Robo, to one day be the #1 Chibi-Robo in all of the world. So, right off the bat, this is a strange mechanic that I've never been hot on. There's a ranking system as you progress through the game and collect happiness points, which are achieved by making anyone happier. The more points you have, the higher the number goes, obviously capping out at #1. Though, I guess I wouldn't call it a mechanic, as much as I'd call it a story progress tracker. You're never going to reach higher ranks until you progress a certain amount in the story. #1 obviously being saved for story completion. But try telling young me that the quickest way to make me too anxious to play a game is to tell me there are a million other people out there that are way cooler and better at video games than me. And so for this reason, I've never been hot on this weird pseudo mechanic. And that's why I wanted to bring it up first so we can get my least favorite thing about this game out of the way. In terms of very real mechanics, it's time to talk about that plug attached to Chibi-Robo's butt. The butt plug. Chibi-Robo runs off a battery system, and boy, what a system it is. Every step you make, every breath you take, chips away at this large battery in the corner, constantly counting down to 0. The larger and more difficult the task, the more battery it consumes, and while this seems like Anxiety City, it's not as scary as it sounds. At first, the battery is incredibly small, not giving you much time to work with. There's also a day and night cycle, and at the beginning of the game, in its completely unupgraded state, it also gives you very short time to work with between the day and the night cycles. During these cycles, different things about the game change, different placements of characters happen, and some characters only appear at night or during the day. Thankfully, to counter this small battery problem, the room you will start your first day in is also not at all large, but is very reliably filled with outlets to plug yourself into and recharge. After plugging yourself in and getting a full battery, the game also prompts you, asking if you'd like to save your game. The sound design and gameplay loop coincide with each other really well, making every plug and save feel satisfying and reassuring, which really helps with that potential anxiety problem I mentioned. Eventually, it feels so satisfying to conquer the battery issue by memorizing the outlet locations and easily keeping track of how much battery you have left. This ends up giving you those moments where you feel very confident in your choices. You know exactly how long you have before your battery is in any actual danger.
Yeah, I've got time.
One thing I really enjoy is how the game starts you the night after the party, so you have a crash course in your cleaning duties, a really clever way to get you used to your future life of indentured servitude. Naturally, you get to work, picking up Mr. Sanderson's toothbrush to scrub the messy floors, collecting trash, and in the middle of your chore spree, the game pulls its first ominous twist. The TV is turned on all by itself. Okay, so personal anecdote here. I was a massive coward as a kid. It was super common for me not to leave main hubs and starting zones in games. These areas were, after all, the safe zones. It's where we begin our journey, and if I know that that area is safe and I don't know how safe the rest of the game is, then I'm gonna stick around there for whatever reason. This is mostly because I hadn't really wrapped my mind around the concept of death in video games being a part of the legitimate process in order to finish a game. Long before I had truly played and beaten games through a process of trial and error, and even longer before Dark Souls had taught me to embrace death, I feared death increasingly in video games. I avoided it at all costs. Chibi-Robo undoubtedly had an invisible hand in helping me get over this issue. Because here, in the starting area, something is immediately intruding on my safe space, and its danger is unclear. However, standing in the static reveals not a jump scare, but a grand and bombastic Henshin-like entrance. Space Hunter, Drake Redcrest. This guy is our local superhero himbo, and I love how over the top he is, but wait a minute. A talking toy? A talking toy? A talking toy? So for reasons that aren't explained until much later, the toys in this house come to life when no one is around, a la Toy Story. I think it really helps add to the childhood magic of the entire game, which is great because, ominous foreshadow, there's nothing magical about the latter half of this game. It's also an incredible subversion of expectations, something that becomes an interesting running thesis of this game. I'm not sure what the intended interpretation of this game is, but I always took away that when things seem scary, they likely just require some further understanding, a message that obviously I always appreciate. The house is full of toys to meet, interact with, and obviously befriend by the end, and the characters are all fun with their own purpose and motivation, oftentimes feeding into the main premise of the game, spread the happiness. Let's run through a few of those toys right now. Egg-shaped toy soldiers who lost a trooper to the family dog, leaving the Sarge desiring some closure while several of his men wish to go AWOL to chase their own personal dreams. There's a romantic subplot of a toy mummy living under a bed, admiring a princess and her large toy castle on far. What's that noise coming from the basement? A supposed spaceman and hero to all patrolling the living room while the dog's chew toy beholds him, wishing that he'd know she even existed. A mysterious symbol on the ground outside, and the same symbol appearing on the television that entrances the family's daughter at night. So badly so that even talking, walking toys can't seem to get her to unfocus. There's that noise from the basement again. A Funkasaurus crushing on a dancing plant. Kid Eggplant, who has no explanation for existing at all. Two frogs separated from each other, a fish, an evil race of mechanical insects. You get the idea. This game seriously has a lot going on, and every moment captivated me as a kid. It is in this game's dichotomy that my interest is truly piqued. Characters, no matter how simple, are always presented in this way, where we get to see both the way they should live and what it is they actually dream of. Everyone has a problem that needs solving, where in plenty of RPGs this feels like transparent factors that feed into gameplay. Chibi-Robo makes it feel so natural and intimately tied to its narrative. Okay, I'm gonna have to start speaking in a nice vague way that glazes over some stuff, but it's so that I can talk about those good juicy bits. One aspect that really makes me adore this game is the same reason I like things like Avatar: The Last Airbender. It's made for children, but at no point does it throw your maturity into question. It doesn't hide or sugarcoat things. Instead, it faces them somewhat head-on. In Chibi-Robo, these things that I like are nice little sprinkles of unhappiness deeply sewn into our family, the Sandersons. Throughout the game, you can find these little hints, and if you're a child, maybe they'll be meaningless to you, but even as a 10-year-old, I picked up on all of them. There's overdue bills in the kitchen. The husband is forced to sleep on the couch. Our first arrival is even accompanied by moans from Mrs. Sanderson, stating that they can't afford something like Chibi-Robo. It's also pretty clear that the dad got Chibi-Robo because he thought it was cool and not for the sake of his daughter's birthday. Speaking of the daughter, Jenny only croaks like a frog. She's not speaking to her parents, and it's not a matter of capability. It's a matter that's far more concerning. She doesn't want to speak to them. As the game goes on, the issues become more and more clear, growing deeper as we continue, to the point that divorce has now entered the chat. Alongside it is the constant concern of money. If something isn't done soon, the Sandersons will be out of money entirely. My favorite part about the money problems, however, is something so subtle in the face of a child, but so easy to understand with time due to the countless clues the game presents to you. This crippling money problem, this sudden spiral into debt, it's directly caused by your existence. That battery system I mentioned, your chibi house plugged into the wall at all hours of the day, every time you felt that sweet release of anxiety knowing that your battery is full once more, you've been the cause. Your energy consumption is through the roof, and every time another overdue bill smacks the kitchen counter, you're to blame. While you are providing an immense service and happiness for everyone around you, it comes at a very literal cost that is soon going to suffocate this family entirely. Okay, it's time we talk about what's in the basement. Somewhat early in the game, the basement calls to you, an aggressive moan and groan. Curiosity must be part of what keeps Chibi-Robo functioning, because through adversity we make it to the damp room and investigate promptly. The basement houses a most interesting revelation, a massive robot that looks shockingly like Chibi-Robo. This is Giga-Robo, the previous family burden, who also provided many good times for the family and others, but his battery consumption was so much worse. Naturally, with no juice in his battery, missing a leg, and being left to rot in the basement, the big guy needs some help. And that's what Chibi-Robo does best. In an act that only furthers the conflict in the household, we charge the battery and bring Giga-Robo back online. Again though, I couldn't, even as a child, help but study this moment with its subtextual implications. Upon learning that I'm ruining this family financially, I was burdened with the feeling of guilt. But when seeing Giga-Robo, once the cause of financial misery before me, here in this basement, alone, uncharged, missing a leg and tossed to one side of the depressingly empty basement, I can't help but feel scared. What if this is my fate too? What if this is the fate of anyone born in my position? Anyone burdened with these circumstances? Okay, just push the thought out of your mind for the moment. We got people to make happy, come on. Jumping far ahead, there are aliens. Yeah, okay, don't act so surprised. We already have living toys. What's an alien that looks suspiciously similar to us in comparison to that? More importantly than the aliens, they have a time machine. Using it, we're taken back to a time long past, a time where the family was happy and the dad didn't have a mustache. We're here in the past because after you've charged the battery, we need one last thing to restore Chibi-Robo, that missing leg. And in order to get it, we need a code for the locked briefcase in the bedroom. Thankfully, the alien's handy-dandy time machine allows us to go back to before the case was locked and find the password. Heading back to the present, it's time to finish this game. So, right as we open this case, it's probably a good time to bring up this game's main antagonist. The, things you've been shooting up to this point. What, you didn't expect to fight anything in this game? Well, put on your Mega Man blaster and let me give you a brief but overdue introduction to the spy doors. Remember when I mentioned evil insects before? These things are everywhere, drips of oil signaling their presence. And these things only appear in the house after you've removed the sticker that leads to the outside world, to me implying that it's your fault that they've been let in. They're programmed by a rival tech company to be hostile towards Chibi-Robo, which surely is grounds for some kind of legal action considering they can just teleport into anyone's home whenever they want and beat the crap out of your little expensive aluminum friend. But what might be even more wild than their existence is their creator, Mr. Sanderson. Yeah, the bum on the couch once invented these things with the intention of being friends and companion products for Chibi-Robo. But in a twist that has no explanation or comprehension, the rival tech company employing Sanderson reprogrammed them to be hostile. Mr. Sanderson clearly left the company upset, but what he didn't tell anyone is that he took with him the most dangerous spy door of all, their queen. So when we return to the opening of the briefcase, we finally see Chibi-Robo's leg in all of its glory. That moment's triumph is short-lived. The queen escapes and shockingly attacks and kidnaps the Sandersons. Chibi-Robo is the only hope of defeating the big boss and restoring order. Chibi-Robo, after a big old fight, finishes off the spy door queen and the threat has passed for now. At one point in the game, the television has a reporter show up explaining that Chibi-Robos are very in this season. The demand for them is so high, however, that the power plants fear that soon they'll outstrip the supply and send the region into a powerless panic. The news broadcast ends with a message of caution, telling viewers to cease use of their Chibi-Robos. And just like that, my fears are coming to fruition. For the sake of analyzing and interacting with the game on a deeper level, I want to take a moment to step away from the play-by-play, because honestly, as you can imagine, everything in the end wraps up with a nice bow. Those aliens I mentioned before are here to provide Chibi-Robo his second wish. A while back they nearly crash-landed and Chibi-Robo saved them. As repayment, they promised to grant him 2 wishes. His first being that all the toys can have souls. They were his friends after all. And aware that Chibi-Robos around the world were causing a power crisis on a massive scale, his second wish was that he and other Chibi-Robos would run on unlimited power, a body that does not need energy. However, back when he made his wish, the aliens only had enough power to grant that first wish. So they promised to return when they could fulfill the second wish. However, upon their return, Chibi-Robo isn't necessarily in action anymore. But in the wrap-up of the game, we successfully charge Chibi-Robo's battery. We reattach his leg and the big guy wastes no time with getting to that second wish. He makes a mad dash straight to the alien ship. And after being granted this second wish of the infinite battery supply, Chibi-Robo, in all of his infinite wisdom, plugs Chibi-Robo into himself, giving Chibi-Robo this same power. Chibi-Robo now has an unlimited battery. We get our fairy tale ending as Chibi-Robos come from all around to be given the same, solving the entire energy crisis for this whole region. In the end, obviously, Chibi-Robo gets his #1 Chibi-Robo spot, and he's now dubbed Super Chibi-Robo, meaning Telly gets to achieve his dream of helping you get to that point. Characters fall in love and find happiness. The parents work things out, Dad admitting his faults and beginning to work on them. Some of the Free Rangers leave their post but find happiness in things like drag racing, pirating, and flying. Happiness is the name of the game. It is the main thesis of everything, but despite that happiness, there's that spice of sadness that persists throughout this game, and it's always stuck with me. I want to touch on something that I think is really brilliant about this game, and it's completely divorced from the wrap-up of the game's ending. Because while we get our happy ending in the end, it doesn't undo what I felt leading up to this point. And boy, did I feel something. I'm an only child from a middle-class family in Kentucky, USA. My parents are an odd couple of two individuals that, despite themselves, love each other and support each other in all of their strange adventures and endeavors. I never had to go through the pain, confusion, and self-questioning of being a child in the middle of a divorce. But I think Chibi-Robo does a really good job of making me understand it on a simplified level that a child like me easily wrapped my mind around. The constant fear that what you do isn't enough to solve the actual issue in the marriage, the complete guilt of knowing that financially your existence is a burden, having all these friends and distractions from the issue at hand, but knowing that still, at the end of the day, your life is still affected by the persistent unhappiness around you. I remember the first time I heard of divorce. I remember exactly where I was. I had walked into a friend's house coming over for the first time, and while there, I noticed how he kept calling his dad by his first name. Instead of confusing and alienating, this felt like a moment of connection. I don't call my dad Dad either. To me, my father has always been Voodoo. No one taught me otherwise, so that's all I've known. And yet, when it was revealed to me that he is, in fact, not his father, my brain did a befuddled backflip, struggling to understand. And that's when I learned about divorce, but it was far later in my youth when I found out about the phenomenon of children coming to the conclusion that the reason for their parents' divorce is them. In the eyes of the child, their parents' split is the child's fault. At first, I found this notion a little ridiculous. The reason for divorce should be obvious, right? The problem is far larger than a kid. It may stem from any number of places, but most of them would be from the parents, not the child, right? But then I think back to this game. I think of the way it made me feel every time I plugged into an outlet before seeing the stacked bills, and then how that feeling was flipped on its head after seeing the damage that I was causing. I think back to how every moment I spent trying to please the parents of this game, it was still surrounded by the overwhelming feeling that everything maybe wasn't going to be all right. When I first played the game, charging Giga-Robo's battery seemed like the right thing to do, a natural progression in the quest to help someone in need. But in my second playthrough, I found it slow and tedious, a very video gamey mechanic, sometimes frustratingly so. But upon an actual analysis of the game, I realized that the slow charging of the battery really puts into scope how much damage I'm absent-mindedly causing this family. Giga-Robo takes 1,000 times more energy to run than Chibi-Robo, and it shows. But even less than that, my very existence is the problem. Chibi-Robo needs to plug in to stay alive, and every time I do so, I cause more strain on the family. Eventually, lining up the cause and effects, it's difficult not to come to the conclusion that I'm the problem. I mean, not only do the Sanderson parents make offhanded comments that reinforce this, but even the news on the television continues to push that narrative. All around me, it feels like there's messages that agree with my conclusion, and this conclusion makes me understand a perspective that I've never had before, and one I never will have. Even if my parents were to divorce tomorrow, I wouldn't be able to feel that same feeling that so many children do around the world. I'm not a kid anymore. There's no way for me to feel and understand things on the level they do. And I'm not saying that the feeling that a dopey video game on the GameCube gave me is in any way equivalent to the situation at all. But what I am saying is that even as a child, Chibi-Robo gave me a new perspective on life. It changed the way I think. I was able to play this game and walk away from it with a new interpretation of both it and the world around me. During a section of the game where the mother locks herself in the bedroom, there's this tragic encounter you can have with Jenny. Jenny is sitting outside her parents' bedroom, crying. With her is her stuffed animal, Sunshine Bear. When you speak to her, she doesn't say much, but interact with Sunshine Bear and he'll give you some more meaningful dialogue about how it's sweet that you came up here because you heard Jenny crying. And whether that's the reason why you came up here or not, it's not Sunshine Bear's voice talking to you, is it? It's Jenny, unable to vocalize her trauma without filtering it through her stuffed animal. One of the only times where, without a frog suit to talk to her, Jenny talks to you. But she has to do it this way. She has to vocalize her trauma by filtering it through her stuffed animal. And I was 10 when I played this. It hurt me then, and seeing it now, as an adult, it's beyond depressing. The profound impact this game had on me, I guarantee it has affected my interactions with other humans in ways I'll never quite calculate. For something to make you empathize, sympathize, and understand life on a new level, to me that's powerful. That's the power of good art. Art is to be interpreted by its beholder, and I think the fact that this game was able to activate my mind with such beautiful subtext is an incredible achievement that it should be recognized for. I realize the absurdity of calling this goofy little video game about an aluminum cleaning droid anything special, but nah, man. Video games are art, and this one remains as one of my all-time favorites, and there's nothing that anyone can say that'll convince me otherwise. I truly and wholeheartedly believe Chibi-Robo is undoubtedly a slept-on masterpiece. Hello and welcome to the Aftermath. If you sat through all of that, thank you very much. I don't know if you can tell, but I actually recorded that after I was coming off of some sort of sickness I caught on my honeymoon. So I apologize for my nasaliness, more so than usual. Also, I apologize for my pretentiousness during the video. There's a lot of things that I wanted to talk about, strictly about the video game, Chibi-Robo, but I decided for the sake of time and sort of getting to the point, I would cut them out. A couple examples of things I wanted to talk about was the music, which I used only Chibi-Robo music for this video, so if you enjoyed that, then give the Chibi-Robo soundtrack a look. Its sound design is also something that is impeccable, and I think, there's just no way to really describe what it's like playing that game. Characters have that Animal Crossing meep mop to it, but I think it almost comes off a little more charming rather than cute in Chibi-Robo. And every footstep you take changes depending on which surface you're walking on. A lot of really cool small details that I didn't go over. There's also a lot of costumes in the game that I think are really neat, and the equipment that you get them from small items. There's a syringe that's a toy syringe you would use with a baby doll. Chibi-Robo gets that. There's a small baby spoon. There's all sorts of stuff that you pick up during the game, and a lot of it's just really cool the way that clever the way that they do it. But like I said, I didn't really find a place to fit it in there, so I'm just talking about it here. Yeah, so if you enjoyed that and you want to see more, hopefully I will do more, and I will get better and better the more we do these. This might be one of the first videos uploaded. I don't know, we'll see. But in terms of editing, this is the final video in a batch of 3 videos that I was making to put up on the channel all at once. I wanted to give off the complete display of what I'm doing here and what I want to do with this channel. So if any of this was to your enjoyment, then make sure to subscribe, do all the stuff. Check out my Patreon if you feel like kicking back. For only $1 a month, you get access to an extra bonus show called Rambling Rabbit, where I just sit down and talk about nothing really, but most of the time it's just me talking about how sad I am that I'm not making videos. Eventually I'm going to change that format because, hey, here I am making videos. You also get access to the outtakes of every episode. Kira, stop. Kira, you're already in the outtakes. Stop. Thank you all for checking this out, and I'll catch you around next time. Be excellent to each other.